This week's Parashas Vayigash, is usually read during the week of Asara B'Teves, during the week of the fast, the 10th day of Teves, one of the 4 fast days that are Zeichel L'Churban, that we observe the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. As the Navi tells us, Som HaRavi'i, the fast of the 4th month, Yud Zayin Tammuz, the fast of the 5th month, Tisha B'Av, the fast of the 7th month, Som Gedalia, and the fast of the 10th month, Asar B'Teves, Yevehem L'Sasim L'Simcha. So there's 4 fast days that we observe throughout the year, and Parashas Yigash usually falls out around that time. And that's the day on which the Babylonians, laid siege to Yerushalayim, to Jerusalem. And there's an obvious connection, as we'll see, between Parashas Vayigash and Asara B'Teves, that the idea of Avas Yisrael, the idea of loving a fellow Jew, loving an individual, and then, as we'll see, it's crucial to understanding of Parashas Vayigash, as well as crucial to understanding Asara B'Teves. Because Parashas Vayigash, we know in Parashas Vayeshev the story with Mechiras Yosef, the selling of the brothers of Yosef and ending up in Mitzrayim. And in Parashas Vayigash, Yosef reveals himself. And as the Orach Chaim HaKodesh points out, it says, Ani Yosef, and then it says, Ani Yosef, Ani Yed Achichem, I am your brother. So the Orach Chaim explains that Yosef said this twice is because, albeit his brothers were very embarrassed, they realized what they did was wrong, but they still didn't believe that this person was Yosef. And in fact, and therefore, first he had to convince them that he was actually Yosef, his brother, and secondly he had to convince them not only was Yosef his brother, but I forgive you for what you did to me when you sold me into slavery. In fact, how do we know the brothers realized they were wrong? Because in the beginning of this week's parasha, Vayigash, I love Yehuda takes a totally different approach. Up until now, he was just being very apologetic. They were taking the punishments in stride when Yosef accused them. But now, at the beginning of this week's parasha, Yehuda gets more aggressive. So why the different approach? The Rabbi Nissen Alpert Zatzal explained that up until now they thought it was punishment for the sin of selling Yosef, the brother. But of course, Binyamin was not involved in that sin. So therefore, once they were just picking on Binyamin, they were going to leave Binyamin and send everyone else back. He realized there's nothing to do with Mechiras Yosef, and therefore Yehuda had to take a stand. But nevertheless, as the Orach Chaim points out, first he had to convince them he was his brothers, and then he had to tell them that don't worry, even though you sold me into slavery, I still love you, I'm still your loving brother Yosef. And we see, according to the Orach Chaim, it seems that Yosef totally forgave the brothers and was looking to get them to not feel bad. We'll see later in next week's Parashat Vayechi, the Rabbeinu Bachaya, others say, maybe it's not so simple, but on what type of level they actually forgive them. But with the Orach Chaim seems to say, Yosef, I'm Yosef, I'm your brother, don't worry, I know all the terrible things that happened, but don't worry, there's an ultimate plan. Rabos machshavas b'leivish, v'atzas Hashem hisakom. Many are the plans of people, but ultimately God, whatever God decides goes. And that's why when we read the parasha, we see Yosef forgiving his brothers for the terrible sin. That Yosef serves as a role model for Klal Yisrael. He could have taken revenge. He was in the perfect situation. Payback time for the brothers. Nevertheless, Yosef went out of his way trying to create a loving relationship and telling them, don't worry, it all turned out for the best, whatever your intentions might have been. And in fact, that's what the Maharal writes, that a person who loves Hashem will look to love everyone. And a person who doesn't love people ends up loving Hashem. It shows you hate Hashem because Everyone's born with Tselem Elokim, we're born in the image of God, and therefore if you have a distaste for people, ultimately it's a distaste for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why Vayigash, the message of Vayigash is Avas Yisrael, loving a fellow Jew. As Rav Hutner likes to say, that Avas Yisrael means you love a Jew because he's a Yid. In other words, if you don't even know someone's Jewish and you love that person, and later on you find out he's Jewish, it's nice to love all people, but you don't get the mitzvah of Avas Yisrael, because part of loving a Jew is because he's a Jew you have to love him. And that's what we see from Yosef. Yosef, I need Yosef, and I am your brother, don't worry, forget about the past, let's move on, we could reconcile. And that's the key message of this week's parsha of Avas Yisrael, because that's why when Yosef, Yamin and Yosef Yehuda, when they were crying, so we know they cried over the Batei, they cried over the future temples that were going to be destroyed, and ultimately they knew that through the temples were destroyed through sinas chinam, through unwarranted hatred. Of course, unwarranted hatred doesn't mean I hate someone for no reason. That you need a psychiatrist for. It means you think you have a good reason, Chazal are telling you it's not a good reason. So Rav Kook points out, if sinas chinam causes destruction, so avas chinam, we have to love people just for the sake of love, and therefore that's how you rectify it. And that's the yisod of Parashat Vayigash, and in fact that's how we can understand the connection to Asara B'Tevis. It's an interesting Avidraham, the Beis Yosef quotes in Shulchan Aruch, in Hilchas Tainus. He writes that Asara B'Tevis is different than the other fast days. That Shim Haya Chol B'Shabbos Lo Hayachol L'Choso Yom Acher. If Asara B'Tevis would fall out on Shabbos, you wouldn't have to fast on Shabbos. He quotes the pasuk in Yecheskel, Chafdal Beis, Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh, Kamo B'Yom HaKippurim. And this like it says Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh, this like it says on Yom Kippur, U'Mesayim HaBeis Yosef, Yadati, and the Beis Yosef quotes this Avidram as a plea. He doesn't know where does he get this from? That Asara B'Tevis is like Yom Kippur in the sense that we know if Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos like it does, we fast on Shabbos. Yom Kippur is biblical. Asara B'Tevis is from the prophets, and Bizman Hazeh, it's only rabbinical, it's only a minhag. So why would it be how could it be stricter than Tisha B'Av? Tisha B'Av is much closer to the status of Yom Kippur. We have we start the night before. That's the whole Ramban. The Ramban writes originally all 4 fast days were Midivrei Kabbalah from the words of the prophets, and they used to start the night before, but it was too much for Klal Yisrael, so we only left it for Tisha B'Av. So how could it be that on Tisha B'Av, when it falls on Shabbos, we don't fast, we push off the fast to Sunday, yet when it comes to Asar B'Tevis, we fast on Shabbos? Of course, it's a tremendous chiddush to Avidraham, and we're never going to disprove him, because Asar B'Tevis can't fall out on Shabbos, so he's safe. It cannot fall out on Shabbos, and therefore you don't have to worry. However, it does fall out on Friday, and we do fast. Tiny Esther falls out on Friday, we move it to Thursday. But we do fast on Friday, which is something we don't usually do. But he claims even if it fell out on Shabbos, we would fast. So what is that? So what's Pshat? Where does he get that from? So there's interesting Chasam Sofer. It's found in the Siddur of the Chasam Sofer, in the explanation to Slichas of Asara B'Tevis. So I heard this explanation from one of my good friends, Rav Baruch Simon. He's a Rosh Hashiva at YU. He explains that there's the Chasam Sofer is based on sources that what is the difference? Why is it we know if there's a yortzeit, we know the minhag is to fast? Well, the different customs on a yortzeit, fast or feast. So the stock in the Shulchan Aruch is to fast, but others among the Hasidim have a minhag of tikkun. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky once said that we see how minhagim change. Where did that minhag of eating on a yortzeit come? At least according to Rabbi Yaakov. That used to be, there was a time of a yortzeit, a time of fasting. So just like when on a fast day, we know that on Erev Pesach, we make a siyam so the people, the firstborns could eat. So too, that's what the minhag was, that on a yortzeit, if you made a siyam, so then you were able to eat. So of course what happened was they dropped the siyam, but the kiddush, the suda remained. But either way, that's a discussion, fast or feast. We paskin, on Shulchan Aruch paskins, that you fast on a yortzeit. So the luck is, if a yortzeit falls out on Shabbos, even if you have a minhag to fast, you do not fast on Shabbos. Yet the halacha is, if you have a tainis chalom, if you have a bad dream, I don't mean any bad dream, but halachically speaking, a very terrible dream about yourself or close members of the family, so there's halacha that you fast the next day. So what happens if you have a bad dream, a halachically bad dream on Friday night? And so the halacha is, you could fast even on Shabbos. So the question is, what's the difference? When it comes to a yortzeit, or let's say even on Tisha B'Av, we don't fast on Shabbos. When it comes to Asara B'Teves and a Tainis Chalom, we do fast. So the Chasim Sofer explained the difference between a Tainis Chalom, which we do fast, and a yortzeit we don't, is a yortzeit is going back on the past, on the Tzara Sha'avra, on something that passed. However, so something which is going back on the past, lo daki Shabbos, doesn't push our Shabbos. In other words, when we're observing a yortzeit, what happened, we lost our loved ones years ago. So anytime we're fasting on something that happened in the past, that's not enough to push off Onik Shabbos, to push off fasting. One has to eat on Shabbos. So why is the Tainis Chalom different? Because the Tainis Chalom is something on the future. You're worried, shooken up. I can't eat. I'm so shooken up by this dream. Maybe it's a sign, Simon and Shamayim, about something that's going to happen in the future. So I'm very worried. If it's something on the Asid, so then you can fast. So on the past you don't fast, and on the future you do. So they point out that, what does that have to do with Asar B'Teves then? So Asar B'Teves, what does that have to do with the future? So Asar B'Teves, they point out, the Chasim Sofer explains, is because that year on Asar B'Teves, they decided that year that the Beis HaMikdash will be destroyed. On Asar B'Teves, it was Paskin, there will be the Churban on Tisha B'Av. And Chasim Sofer says not only that year, but every year on Asar B'Teves, one has to, when God decides every year on Asar B'Teves about the Churban Habayis, the destruction of the temple. So that's what the Chasim Sofer says. The reason why you have to fast, even if Asar B'Teves comes out on Shabbos, according to Avidram, is because this year on Asar B'Teves, God's going to decide whether the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt or remains the same. And as Chazal tell us, that every year, every generation, every door is responsible for not building the Beis HaMikdash. If we're worthy, then we're going to go ahead and build the Beis HaMikdash. And if we're not worthy, so God won't rebuild it. So that's the pshat in the Avidram. It's going on the future, and every year, we on Asar B'Teves, which is coming up, God decides whether you can go on, whether you can actually have a Beis HaMikdash or not. And with this, we can understand something else. That in the Sefer Beis Yishai from Shlomo Fisher, he says a tremendous thing. Again, he doesn't have any early source for it, but we'll see what he wants to point out, that all the fast days, Yud Zayin, Tammuz, Tisha B'Av, besides the terrible things that happen on Yud Zayin, Tammuz, on Tisha B'Av, where we fast, but there were precursors, there were things that happened before it. So for instance, on Yud Zayin, Tammuz, the Cheda Ego, the sin of the golden calf. We know on Tisha B'Av, it was the sin of the Meraglim. So what happened on Asar B'Teves? So he wants to say, I guess it's educated speculation. You know what happened on Asar B'Teves? What terrible thing happened? Mechiras Yosef. That's when the sale of Yosef happened. How did he get that? Because Chodesh Teves is known as the mazu of the Gedi, of the goat, and the pasuk says by Mechiras Yosef Bereshis Lamed Zayin Lamed Aleph, Vayishchatu Serizim. And it says, and they slaughtered the Serizim, they dumped it, the coat of Yosef into the blood of the Gedi. So he wants to say perhaps that's what happened on Asar B'Teves, is Mechiras Yosef. If it's true, it fits in very nicely, because that's the whole yisod of Parshas Vayigash, is the Avas Yisrael, is the reuniting of the brothers, and Yosef did not take revenge, and he tried to make them feel comfortable. And that's the whole concept of Asar B'Teves, that we pray on Asar B'Teves that the Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt. And since the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because of sinas chinam, unwarranted hatred, the way to bring it back is through avas chinam. And that's what we pray every year on Asar B'Teves, that in Shamayim, on this year on Asar B'Teves, that they will paskin that this year the Som HaChamishi, the Som of Tisha B'Av, will be changed out of a day of Sarah to a Sason to a Simcha, and that's the connection between Parshas Vayigash and Asar B'Teves. They both have the underlying theme of Avas Yisrael.